Gil Cedillo, Chair of the Housing et al. Committee. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to value your time. I want to let you know that I've been working with a cold for about a week, so I'm going to power through this. If I collapse or fall out, Mr. Fuentes will step right in, so have confidence in that.
Let's play this one evening.
But we are going to expedite or be punctual and efficient and effective in the conduct of this meeting. We're going to go right through it. I've got 4 appointees. They're going to move on consent. Very qualified appointees. We're very happy to see them, some from your neck of the neighborhood. So we want to call them up. Can we have Ms. Irma Becerra Nunez come up? We need 2 more chairs. Can we have Ms. Tara Maxey come up? Ms. Yana Farrar. Did I say that right?
It's Ilana.
Ilana, okay.
You can call me Lonnie. Everybody does.
Okay, Lonnie. And Mr. William, quote, Blinky, close quote, Rodriguez. Certain people just know him by one name. We don't have that status, but some do. So let's hear from each of you with respect to your positions, your experience, what you bring, and why our mayor made this decision and why you're going to make it a good one.
I guess
Sir,
they
brother.
pushed the mic over, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to be able to provide service on this commission. I have an extensive background in the community. Long before I started my own work through a nonprofit called Communities in Schools, and I've always had a heartbeat for community and for families. And so the last official year, 20 years of my life, I've worked diligently in the community, addressing issues of public safety through violence, all the way to full integrated services to help family and high-risk youth, whether it's education, whether it's jobs, whether it's community mobilization, all of the above.
Good. Irma? Mr. Fuentes, do you have questions? Okay.
So thank you very much. I'm Irma Becerra Nunez, and I'm very honored to have been appointed as a commissioner on the Commission of Community and Family Services. So I've been an educator and also a community advocate throughout my life. My focus has been cultural arts education, also cultural heritage preservation, and I'm now actively working to preserve adult education in the public schools and primarily older adult education. And so I feel that this particular commission is dealing with families. And so the work I've done has constantly been advocating to support families, multi-generational families who are in need of not only academic, ESL, citizenship, and career training, but whose grandparents the grandparents are the caregivers and mentors to young children who are in the schools. And the adult parents are working and going to school trying to better their lives. And so active older adults really need to be kept healthy, to have programs that teach them technology so that they can care for their grandchildren. And at the same time, they're the caregivers for the elderly. And so we're fighting to preserve all of adult education as well as the arts, our architectural preservation in our community, and to be able to provide a diverse programs for people who are in need. And so I've worked with the Getty Foundation, with UCLA, with LAUSD since 1975, and I have a life credential in adult education. And so I really feel that this particular commission will give me an opportunity to continue the work that I've done throughout the community.
My only question is, how do you live in CD5?
Well, I grew up in City Terrace.
I know that.
And as a matter of fact, and I moved to the Worcester District when I was in college, and then I moved to the Valley since 1973. I bought my home over there. But since 1973, I kept the address of my parents, so I kept voting in East LA for many years. But now the Valley is very diverse.
You're in trouble if you're going to run for office in the future.
Now the Valley is very diverse, and there's a large Latino community, African American community. We also, I also work with the Jewish community, with Armenians, Chinese, Filipinos, and so in the Valley as well as in Northeast LA, where I teach, I'm able to serve diverse communities.
Linky, thank you for all the things that you do. The notoriety of your great work goes beyond the Valley, and I've known it and I've known you for many years. You know what? Thank you so much, because it's a little incongruent for me to think of you in the Valley, because I see you so much in the Northeast, and the great work working with your husband, and the great work around the mural preservations. Just incredible, important work for our community. So thank you. Yes.
Hello, my name is Tara Maxey, and I feel so honored to be considered to be appointed on this commission. I own a catering company called Heirloom LA, based in Eagle Rock. We do a lot of work with small family-owned ranches and farmers, and work to bring attention to their plight against the industrialization of our food system, and we are working to build a bridge to communicate and teach certain issues that we've learned from them. We do a lot of work at the Challengers Boys and Girls Club in South Los Angeles, and teach a class there every week to basically teach them cooking, teach them nutrition, and do a lot of other work with them as well as the Garden School Foundation. And we try to use the attention that we've been so lucky to get to bring to build a platform for different progressive food policy issues.
Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ilana Farrar.
Let me ask you, Tara, so where do you live? You're in Mount Washington?
In Mount Washington.
Nice.
My name is Ilana Farrar. Please call me Lonnie. Thank you so much to this committee for giving me the opportunity to express my enthusiasm and gratitude for being considered for the CCFS and for the opportunity to serve the city that I love. Unlike many, I actually grew up in Los Angeles on the east side in the Los Feliz Silver Lake area. And my mother grew up here, too, in the Hancock Park area. And so we feel very tied to this community that we love so much. And being part of this kind of extended community of Los Angeles, I've seen great wealth and abject poverty. And as a religious lay leader through my synagogue and through educational leadership of my children's school, I really felt like having the opportunity to work at the city level was the logical next step and really where I wanted to put my time and effort and energy. We've brought goods and services to families in need. We've helped young children relate to the idea that there are children that don't have and children that do, and letting them get involved in the opportunity to be able to help serve other families has been a really big goal of mine and something that's very important to me and something that I connect with really deeply. As a mother with two young children, it's important for me that I am ready to take on this role and do it thoughtfully and respectfully and systematically for the good of the city that I love so much. So thank you.
Tara, thank you. We need to get to know each other better. And I'm sure the city appreciates your work in South LA, but, we're just going to bring you home. And we want to do a lot of work with you in the 1st District, both in the Northeast and over down towards the Pico Union. areas, all those related communities, University Village, Pico Union, BLQ, etc. We want your talent, your passion. We look forward to it, but we really want to bring you home. I have a sense of being proprietary about this matter. So, Lonnie, thank you so much for making this commitment at your young age to do this type of service. Is a great example for people to commit to the city. It's what we're all excited about. Mr. Fuentes and myself, the mayor, all come from experiences where we really appreciate civic involvement, civic engagement. So we thank you for volunteering and doing this. So I'm prepared to move all 4 appointees.
Second.
Okay. So
Mr. Chair, Clay McCarty with the State Legislative Office. I didn't get a chance to read these items into the record, so I'd
Perfect.
just like to do that real quickly.
That'd be great.
Items 1 through 4 are appointments of Ms. Becerra Nunez, Ms. Maxley, Ms. Farrar, and Mr. Rodriguez to the Commission on Community and Family Services. Thank you.
And for the record, these will be communications from the chair and the vice chair.
Okay. Do we do a hearing with it? Got it. How are we, Rich? We're good?
Yes.
Okay, so congratulations, all of you. Look forward to working with you, Tara. We're going to be hounding you. Thank you. Okay. Who wants to accept money and give out car seats? Let's move it. Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read the item 5?
Please.
Item 5 is a housing and CAO reports relative to authorization to accept and execute $450,000 traffic safety grant from the state of California to implement the Child Passenger Safety Program.
Perfect.
Well, now I think it's... We get 200 each on.
Yeah, there you go.
We were going to give you 150 each, but you came late, so we took... We're at 175 each, and you're down to 100.
What a Prince for.
Can we get housing up on... housing here?
Yeah.
Come on up. We like conversations where we're receiving money. We've had these meetings where we've had to make cuts, and particularly with something that's as great as this. So tell us about the program. I obviously have an interest in how we make that program work effectively and for the more underserved communities. So
So the city has been getting this grant for 13 years, so it's a very established program. And what it basically does is there's 3 staff that are paid for through the grant, and they go out into the community all over the city, and they provide training on how to use the car seats, how to install them properly. And then they focus on low-income eligible clients. And after the training, those clients can get free car seats. And then they also have a program for booster seats for older children. And they coordinate with all the family source centers, which there are 16 that we contract with throughout the city. And then we have some direct city service ones that we have staffed. And then they also coordinate with medical centers, with the LAPD, a number of other nonprofit communities. It's quite an established program because it is so popular.
okay. I know we all probably have the same questions. I'll defer, Mr. Fuentes.
Yeah, so how would you deploy sort of this grant? And I mean, how do you sort of decide? Is it based on sort of the census tracts, or what's the strategy to deploy?
You mean how it's expended, you
Right.
mean? Well, it's set up primarily through, again, the family source centers. We communicate with them. Those are geared towards people who are low income, who need the service, who need the car seats, who might not be able to get it otherwise.
So there's 14 family source centers?
There's 16 that are
16?
contracted. Right now, there's 5 that the city has that they pay for directly.
So do you divide the sort of the resources by those 16? The reason I ask is in my district, for example, I currently have 2 family source centers, one that is city-owned and one that is contracted within a mile of one another. So I'm just wondering, how do you, I don't know if that's unique, but how do you decide who gets how much?
Ask Olivia, do you know? I'm somewhat new to the program, so I'm going to defer to Olivia, who is very well versed in these items.
Olivia
All matters
Mitchell.
related to the city.
In the housing department. That is unique to have two of them within a mile of each other, but it
And I think
doesn't...
that's going to be probably fixed as a result of what's happening, but in the meantime, how do we deal with it?
We deploy them to those centers, but those are not the only places. As you know, when you were in the state assembly, we did some in your area, in Panorama City. So we respond to requests from nonprofit agencies. We go to the McAllister and Ramona, where they have pregnant and parenting teens. So we try to get the program as many places as we can, based on requests that come to us, based on nonprofits that we are aware of. There are more poor people in the city than we can serve, so it doesn't matter if they're a mile away, because in terms of the programs, we go to a foster care program and provide the program, so we're kind of all over. UAW, we're working now with USC Hospital, so we're trying to get to where, especially the pregnant and parenting teens, to teach them about car seat safety and what you need. I mean, how the laws change, because now you have to be 50 pounds and 8 years old.
Right.
Otherwise you have to sit in a booster chair, which, some young children don't like, but they have to anyway. So we do the education programs, but it's not that we divide them amongst 16 sites or 21 sites. We go almost anywhere that people ask us if they meet the low-income requirement, and we have the time. The state has asked that we do the training. However, previously we had trained other nonprofits, so sometimes those nonprofits have their own certified technicians, and we supply the chairs and they do the training. But for the car seats, you have to have a 30-minute, 45-minute class, which we offer in English and Spanish and through interpreters. We've done it for the Thai communities, Korean communities, and et cetera.
Great. Well, the only suggestion that I would have is, one, obviously sort of use us to figure out how to serve, but you all, as my colleagues have mentioned, have got real expertise here. And it was new news to me when I saw that. I'm accustomed to CHP having the training available to the community,
Yes.
but I did not realize that LAPD actually also has
Yes, they have.
a unit that goes out to do this sort of teaching. And so to me, however we can leverage those resources to make sure that we're getting folks trained.
And then actually, they're doing that, working with LAPD right now to set up some joint trainings. And
Fantastic.
the grant actually pays for 3,000 car seats, so it's a fair number that we can distribute.
Great. Well, I'm happy.
They have certified technicians. We have the seats. They have to cooperate with us.
Sure, no, very good. Well, I'm happy to move the item. Thank you so much for your work.
Mr. Price?
No comments. Good work.
We,
Much needed.
all three of us have friends in Sacramento. This is a wonderful grant and a wonderful program, particularly for new parents. But it seems that we should enhance this. Now, here's what's happening. We were funding DUI checkpoints, which were being used to look for undocumented motorists. We're going to have 2.5 million new motorists on the highways with licenses. We would want them to make themselves available of this. It seems in Sacramento we may want to take those grants and see if we can move them over into this program, as opposed to having them do the checkpoints, which we were trying to, I think we outlawed them. I wrote one bill that was to minimize them. So those resources that we're getting from the feds, seems like this would be the perfect place to transfer them to. So if any of us have a chief of staff that's now a member or someone we could hopefully influence.
In the legislature?
Right.
There might be one or two of us around.
Yeah, we could look into that. As
I
we
would
go into
point
budget.
out that to attend our classes and to receive our seats, citizenship was not a requirement. You just had to show up.
We appreciate that. Okay. Thank you so much. We got a motion. We got a second.
Second.
Okay. Consent.
Mr. Chair, item 6 is a housing and CO report relative authorization to release an RFP for landlord outreach and educational services for the city's rent escrow account program and utility maintenance program.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. Madeline Rackley with the CAO. The Housing and Community Investment Department requests authority to release a request for proposals to hire a consultant to provide landlord outreach training for the rent escrow account program and for the utility maintenance program. The term of the contract would be for 1 year, starting July this year, and there would be an option for 2 one-year renewals. The annual amount of the contract would be $150,000, and that would be paid for by the Code Enforcement Trust Fund and the Rent Stabilization Trust Fund. The department states that it will follow the city's normal contracting process. It will advertise this request for proposals on all of the city's platforms and invite people who've participated before as well as new people to apply. The criteria are explained in the transmittal from the Housing Department, but they have to have some experience already providing this kind of training. They have to be in good standing with the regulatory and oversight agencies, et cetera. The scoring criteria are also included in the transmittal, so the whole process is very transparent. The CAO supports the request for the release for proposals. There will not be an impact to the general fund as a result of this contracting process.
Okay. Questions from my colleagues?
So the question that I've got is, give us a little history on this effort. I mean, where are we relative to previous efforts? Is this on par with efforts? Is this a new effort? Is it more or less in terms of value than previous efforts? I don't. I know about the program. I just don't know about the infrastructure.
Sure, and I can answer a little bit, but I think the staff from housing could probably answer in depth more. But this type of landlord outreach training has been in process for about 13 years. So this is not a new program to have the outreach done by contractors, and the cost is a little bit more this time, but that's just normal as over time costs increase. But the price is about the same as it has been in the past.
Sure, and I don't have a problem with the price. I'm just wondering out loud if how effective have we been? Because, I mean, what's sort of the back of the envelope math on how many landlords we've got in the city, and understanding that resources are precious and we don't have sort of unlimited resources, but how effective have we been with this size of a contract? Should we be considering a larger contract? Should we be developing a different strategy since we've been sort of deploying the same effort for 13 years? I mean, how successful have we been, and how do you measure success?
Sure. I think Roya can explain a little bit more about how, because they track this and they manage all that.
So. Good afternoon, Roya Babazadeh, Housing and Community Investment Department. This contract is specific for we have two parts of the outreach services that are provided by contractors. One is the outreach that is geared specifically primarily toward tenants, and one outreach program that is geared toward landlords to provide a specific program based on the need of landlords in the Los Angeles and those that they have properties in REAP. These two components are very important factors in success of the program. Rent escrow account program is an enforcement program that was intended to encourage property owners that they have persistent violation with housing code in their property to fix the violations and remove the property from REAP and maintain their properties. Tenants are entitled to rent reduction based on this program from 10% to 50%. And therefore, they can submit either the reduced rent to the property owner or to the department that we hold that in an escrow account administered for the property. This money can be used to remove the violations, pay for necessary services in the property, or pay for relocation assistance to the tenants. Based on provisions of this program, some part of the program relates to landlords, some part relates to tenants. It's very, very important to ensure that both parties understand their rights and responsibilities, under this program. Once we educate property owners, they know what to do. They expedite the removal of the property from REAP. And once we educate the tenants to know the benefit of participating in the program, they submit their rent to the program. That is financial disincentive for property owner to continue being in violation. So outreach is a very important factor in success of the program. We have been able to bring over 32,000 units into health and safety condition through enforcement of REAP. One factor that we track to make sure the program is successful is how many cases are referred to REAP, how many we remove from REAP. Last 3 years, we have been able to remove more properties from REAP than we are accepting. In 2013, we removed 22% more properties than we accepted into REAP, and therefore we are seeing reduced of number of properties and number of units in REAP. The second factor that we look at to ensure that the program is successful is the length of the time that the property stays in REAP. In 2013, properties that are removed from REAP stayed in REAP for average of 5 months, versus it was average of 17 months in 2010. So the education, it pays into removing these cases much faster and make sure property owners understand the responsibilities of how to maintain the property. And the rate of recidivism is very low, 6%. So those property owners that they experience being in REAP, they learn how to maintain their properties, and mostly they are not returned to this program again.
And I think that's a really good overview of the program, and I understand that. I guess, let me see if I can better word my question. How do we right-size this sort of RFP? Are we spending enough to do enough outreach? Should this be $1 million contract so we can reach more landlords so that we can figure out how to prevent them from getting in REAP and getting them off of REAP? Or is does this sort of amount of a contract actually handle the volume? Because I hear an awful lot from people that it's very difficult once you get onto REAP to get off, and I assume that this outreach will help people get off of REAP, which is how we're measuring success. But how many cases are folks, these contractors, expected to handle? And is the demand this high, and we're only able to get to this much, or can we get to this much if we spent another $100,000? How do I know it's the right size program?
Let me add to that. Our experience with the Korean and Korean American community. So we had the workshops working with you guys. It was packed. I don't know if you remember that, but it was packed, and everyone did a great job, and the translations were incredible. But there's these other language communities in Los Angeles. I think we speak over 100 in the city. Immigrants are very entrepreneurial, and they come here and they make these investments, and they all come to Los Angeles for the American dream, and a lot of that's tied into buying property and then owning a duplex or a fourplex and some rentals, etc. And so there's a lot of communities that I want to make sure that we do adequate multilingual outreach. And as the council member was saying, that we want to make sure that we give you enough money to do that.
We believe the synergy of the services that we have, which outreach contractors are one part of it, it covers what we need to provide services to the constituents. As you mentioned, the workshop for Korean American work very well. We also offer them additional workshop that we are in the process of conducting specific in their language to reach out as many people as possible. Besides the contracts, 5 contracts that we have that mainly are community-based organizations meet with people on the field on off working hours, on weekend, to provide services to them. We also have 2 hotlines in the department. One hotline is a REAP hotline that our staff are answering calls and providing information 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And also the billing hotline that if they REAP property owners have issues with their billing and the fees that they owe to the department, can contact this hotline and get assistance that way. Through workshop, we have one workshop every month. We reach out property owners and investors, and recently we see also bank representatives are coming to these workshops because it's not just for RIP properties, but also preventing from property owners
Right.
from coming to RIP. And also, we have staff that they meet with the individual property owners at the counter in Garland Building, providing information and assistance. And as I mentioned, the synergy of all services that we have, it seems to be sufficient. We felt that we need to boost a little bit of direct services to the property owners. That is the reason that we changed the dollar amount for this contract from $105,000 to $150,000 to add one additional person to provide direct services while we still keep the overhead constant. As I mentioned, if we want to increase services, that would be cost to the property owners because this program is administered by the fees that property owners pay to the RIP, $50 per unit per month. If we increase the cost of running the program, that cost is going to be passed to the property owners, so at a certain level it becomes inconvenience. We believe the level that we have, services that we are providing now would be sufficient.
There's your answer. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks for your testimony, both. Are these services mandatory? Is it optional? I mean, are landlords and developers required to attend these workshops if they want to do something further down the line? Are tenants required to avail themselves of these services? Is it mandatory, or is it just sort of there for those who choose to use them?
At this time, it's not mandatory. We were thinking about finding venues to make it mandatory because it's really beneficial. Sometimes people don't see that benefit up front. At this time, it is voluntarily. We reach them out, contractors reach them out and provide the information, try to encourage them to take advantage of the resources that are available to them for free. For example,
Well, do you see any benefit in requiring and making it a mandatory that, you know,
I like to see that it becomes mandatory.
You would like to see that?
Yes, because I believe in outreach and education that helps people. I know that once they know what to do, I have experience that it expedites the process and helps them. We see that they're taking advantage of these services more than before. We reached to that point maybe without making it mandatory, but mandatory would be a way to look at giving assistance that they needed at the very upfront at the beginning.
That's really the helpful source of information at the beginning of the
Yes.
process from folks. Anyway, thank you.
Great. Other questions? Okay, let's hear from the public. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for the work that we did in Koreatown. That was incredible. Gloria, Dab's man. Yep. And Bill, you want to sit up here also?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman.
Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. I heard that lady speak, and it probably does help people who have the money, who don't know how to manage their property, but many people are placed in the REIT because they're old. I inherited some property with my brothers from my parents, and they were going to put it in REIT because the strap wasn't around the water heater. And that's ridiculous. Right. There's no standards. Anything can put you in REIT. And to get out of REIT is very difficult. And there's just no land. I mean, I go in the housing department, and I feel like I'm on a foreign land. There's nothing for a landowner. And I'm afraid to rent. I have a unit that's vacant, and I'm afraid to rent it because it's all pretty tenant-oriented. It's not very landlord-friendly in the city of L.A. And I was born here. I'm very proud to be a member of the city of Los Angeles. But I called housing because my tenants were doing prostitution, and the neighbors called me, and $1,800 later, the only thing in the garage wasn't cited, the place where the prostitution, where they were taking people to prostitute. So I don't think it's very effective.
Okay.
Have you attended, Mr. Chairman? Have you attended these REAP orientations?
No, I will attend them if that will help, but my property's not...
That you may have been approached by one of the
I've been approached by it, but right now, I got a unit that's vacant. As soon as it gets rented, yes, I will. Because it costs money. It's $99, and I can afford that, but for a lot of other people, can't afford it.
Okay.
Do you want me to leave?
Yeah. Listen, a lot of what you talked about, with all due respect, sounds great, but the fundamental problem is the housing department. Number one, there's a...
But Bill, let's focus this conversation.
Okay. Until...
This is not a conversation about the structure of REAP. This is a conversation about the outreach programs that we're utilizing and whether or not this is an appropriate amount.
This is what I believe. Since the housing department itself is a pro-tenant agency, and they have 4 outreach contractors that are pro-tenant, and we only have one that's allegedly landlord-friendly, what we have to do is, these programs are not going to work until you start citing destructive tenants. There's a handful of tenants in the city of LA, and I'm saying 1%, 2%. Most tenants are very good people. We like tenants. They're our customers. But there's a handful of tenants who know how to play the system. They know how to get a building in a REAP. They know how to keep it in REAP. And all these programs mean nothing because the housing department itself is not landlord-friendly. You can't go down there. You talk to the average inspector, and there's no good faith will towards landlords. You actually need almost like another agency to help landlords, because I've had discussions with Dina Eberly, and she said here that she thinks REAP and SCEP are a good thing. So I'm thinking you need a group that just helps the landlords, and that group cannot respond to housing because, of course, housing will cut off the program and cut the money out. It's got to respond to this group or city council where they can lock horns with housing when housing's wrong.
Got it.
I'm sorry if I went over. All right.
Went over, but it's okay.
Okay.
We've got Lourdes Soto. And Dina, you want to come up, Dina?
Good afternoon. My name is Lourdes Soto, and I work for the Coalition for Economic Survival for about 10 years. And I'm one of the outreach contracted to do outreach and education for the tenants. And I'm here supporting the need of having the landlord contractor to do education to the landlord. We find very helpful that if for instance, owners contact us, and if we always guide them to see if they have questions, if they don't find their way, we definitely refer them to the landlord outreach contractor. So we really support this contract for them.
Okay. Thank you. Dina.
Well, I wanted to just voice my opinion that I think that it's a great contract. I think that it's been extremely helpful to landlords. I think REAP is difficult, and it already has financial implications on the landlords. There are companies out there that are charging these landlords to get assistance in REAP and, pulling money from the escrow account to make their repairs for them or whatever.
Right.
Our services are completely free to the landlord. I'm available 24/7 for them, and it is very, very helpful to them. We have done, in addition to the monthly workshops, we've arranged, as part of Landlord Outreach, other additional workshops, such as with the Fair Housing Landlord Coalition. We did a specific workshop for them, and and I know that Councilman Fuentes mentioned expanding beyond REAP. If a landlord calls me and they've gone to the general manager's hearing and they've been referred to us, then if they're not in REAP yet and they're just at second inspection, I will absolutely help them. I just feel that it's right to do under the contract, and I think any landlord outreach contractor would do the same.
Very good. Thank you.
Are you two with the same organization or two separate?
Two separate. I'm landlord outreach contractor currently, and
Tenant outreach.
CES, Coalition for Economic Survival. Michael Millman.
Thank you. Michael Millman, Millman. Let's be direct. Let's be firm. The outreach contractor who currently has it is a sweet, adorable, nice lady. The entire operation, from her point of view, has been bankrupt, a train wreck, and a complete disaster. There never should be a single unit ever going into REAP if it's properly managed. There has never been, from Eberly Company, a workshop, seminar of any nature at any time that reached out to AOA, AGLA, Action, or Southern Cities. Never. Not one time. Ms. Everly stated, and I respect her opinion, the best thing that ever happened to a landlord was systematic code inspection in the REAP program. That's the best thing that ever happened to them. We need to look at this whole program, not let LAHD oversight this and grade these contractors. Never. It should be landlords getting their own. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Fuentes, Mr. Price?
Move the RFP.
I'll second.
Okay, we will move the RFP. Matter's going to be moved on consent. Motion, second.
Second.
Matter moved. Okay.
Mr. Chair, Clay McCarter-Steele, we recommend that, so by moving the RFP, do you mean to adopt the CAO report recommendations?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the regular meeting. Now would be the time for general public comment or to go into the special meeting.
No cards? No cards. Okay, great. Let's go. I don't want to get ahead of anybody. You want to move us into the special?
Yes, item 7 on the special agenda is a housing and CAO report relative to approval to issue letters of support and conditional support for managed pipeline projects for the low-income housing tax credit first round of 2014 and other related actions.
Okay. What are we doing with this? Let's go.
Good afternoon again. Madeline Rackley with the CAO. In January 2014, the Mayor and Council approved the first 19 projects to be included in the managed pipeline projects as proposed by the Housing and Community Investment Department. Now, as a result of that process, the Housing and Community Investment Department requests that the first 6 projects be recommended for letters of commitment. And they've got several other requests in this package. They would like to provide up to $2.6 million in funding from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for one of those projects. They would like to extend the terms, the pre-development contract terms for 2 of the projects for another 2 years. These were projects that were former CRA LA projects. They've also requested to negotiate an exclusive negotiation agreement with Clifford Beers Housing to develop the Casa de Rosas project, which was also a community redevelopment agency property. In addition, there are 2 projects, Courtly Villas and First and Soto TOD apartments, that were not selected for any tax credits, and so the Housing Department would like to unearmark the funds that were originally earmarked for those projects. It's not a controller action, it's just you had originally approved the funds to be used for that. Now we're asking you not to approve them. And
Direct those to the first
yes,
district.
yes. And then okay, so that's those are the requests. The CAO is in agreement with these requests. There are a couple of changes to the actual language in the housing transmittal, and I don't know if I need to read those changes or if since that you just received the CAO report. The CAO report contains those changes. So
Go ahead and make the oral amendment.
okay. So the recommendations would be that council, subject to the approval of the mayor, adopt the recommendations in the transmittal dated February 20th, 2014, from the Housing and Community Investment Department, HCID, with the following changes. So number one would be to replace former recommendation 2A with the following language. Issue a California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, CTCAC 2014 Round 1 letter of support to the sponsors of the Gateway Apartments, LDK Apartments, Paloma Terrace, Selma Community Housing, and the Marmion Way projects, subject to the condition that the sponsors apply to CTCAC in the allocation round authorized by HCID LA. The second recommendation is to add the following recommendation as 2L in the housing recommendations. The language would be deobligate the funding for the following projects which received letters of commitment in prior actions. That would be for Courtly Villas and the First and Soto TOD apartments, and that totals $1 million. The third recommendation would be to replace recommendations 3A and 3B in the original housing transmittal with the following recommendation as number 3. Authorize the controller to allocate and expend funds from the following fund and accounts for the project below in accordance with the initial call for projects recommendations. This has to do with LDK apartments, and the total is $2,650,000. Fourth would be to delete recommendation 4 in the housing transmittal, and the fifth CAO recommendation would be to replace attachment 1 in the original HCID transmittal with attachment A that's attached to your report. They look the same, but there's some minor differences. And let's see. I think that was it. Is that it? I think that's it. Okay.
There was one more, right? But I don't know how to refer to it. In my transmittal, it's 2J,
Right.
which talks about an ENA with Casa de Rosas. We want to table that item.
Yeah, we're having some more conversations with the developers. Anyone from De Beers here? Just curious. Okay. Could you just give a little background on that, Mr. Chairman, if you mind?
Sure. On that specific item?
Yeah, on 2J.
Sure. 2J is it was originally a recommendation to allow us to execute an ENA, an exclusive negotiating agreement with Clifford Beers for Casa de Rosas. Casa de Rosas is one of our CRA inheritances, vacant property located on Adams and Hoover, right? The CRA and their staff went through the process of a public process of selecting a developer to redevelop the site. They got their board to approve that selection of Clifford Beers. The city council, I think, confirmed that selection. But at that point, the CRA was dissolved and they couldn't execute anything, so it never got executed. The ENA never got executed. After we received the control of the site early this year or mid last year, we've recently done some follow-ups and some investigation. Found that we asked the originally proposed developer, Clifford Beers, to revisit their proposal, to revise it in any way, and then so we could decide whether it was reasonable to come and ask that they continue, or we would start the process all over again. So anyway, that's the background, and I think that at this point, the developer needs to do a little bit more community outreach to address some concerns addressed by the community, and after that point, we may come back if that's what's desired.
Right, I agree. Do you have any other comment on this?
The CAO would concur with a request from housing. That would be fine.
Okay, well, the recommendation is to approve it. My request is to amend it to amend the report to remove the recommendation.
I should be more. I should be clearer. So the CAO would go along with that amendment.
Okay.
I need it read my mind.
Okay.
All of court here, we're not ready to go forward.
But tell me, what's the impact? So let's say we come back in 2 weeks or a month and approve it. let's say. Is there funding allocated in jeopardy now? Is it,
no.
do they go back in the beginning, at the end of the line, or what happens?
Well,
to the-
the thing is, technically, the Clifford Beers does not have site control of the site. They will not have site control until we execute an ENA, an exclusive negotiating agreement. Site control is required in order to enter the managed pipeline, so they will not be able to enter the managed pipeline, compete for it until they have site control. Everybody else has site control, so that's one of the threshold requirements.
I'm sure I'd like to amend it to remove
Okay.
the recommendation. And I'll move everything else.
Good. So noted? Noted? Okay. Let's hear from Carl. Carl Luff.
Thank you.
You're good? Okay.
You'd love to hear his voice. He's got a really deep voice.
Maybe later. Okay, so we're good. Can we move that? A motion?
I'll move the motion with the...
All the amendments.
With the amendment to remove.
Second.
Council members, this item is in council on Friday, and there is some urgency because the applications are due next week. So just for your information.
Okay, so that's whatever needs to be done. Super forthwith. Finally, item number 8, report
Item number-
CAO and housing.
Item number 8 is a housing and CO report relative to acceptance of $50,000 from the 15 Group Land Development LLC for peer review and an economic analysis of the Wyvern Garden Apartments project, and authorization for the controller to establish accounts.
Okay. Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Helmi Heserick with Housing and Community Investment Department. This is there's a specific plan in process in the east side. This is in Council District 14. The Housing Department has been asked to review it and provide comments to the applicant, and this is a request for funding for a peer review of the economic analysis done and some additional reviews so that we can really look at the economic impacts on the affordable housing side. The applicant has agreed to provide $50,000 to the city for the peer review of their economic study, and there's some additional funds being requested from the city, from the housing department to expand the analysis should we need to do that.
And the additional funds is the $25,000?
$25,000.
And what are we going to do with that?
We'll be using that to look at the feasibility of the community benefits that are proposed within the project for the tenants. There's a lot of low-income tenants that may be impacted by the proposed development plan.
Okay. All right. Mr. Fuentes, we're ready to move. You need...
I'm good with that.
Good. Thank you.
I'll move it.
Move. Thank you. Second it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Got it?
Okay.
Okay. Move the recommendation of the...
You know what, could I, I'm sorry, I should have brought this up. We have stated in the memo, in the transmittal, a request to negotiate the contract and then seek approval of the contract, come back to council for approval. And I would request that we change that to seek approval to negotiate and execute the contract to avoid having to come back again for another council approval. This will expedite our being able to go forward.
Okay. We're all for that?
I move as amended.
Seconded.
Second.
As amended.
Can I have 2 minutes for general public?
Did you fill out a card?
Oh, I'll get it.
So we are prepared to move this matter. Move seconded, consent. We will need I am prepared, but we don't have public comment. We could do this separately, unless there's something you need to have on the record. I think your dispositions towards the department are well established. You've done a stellar job in making that clear. And we've gone through the entire process, and you're not a novice here. So, people normally put their cards in at the beginning.
I'll just wait till the meeting with you then.
Yeah.
To go over. Okay, fine.
Okay. I think that's more constructive if we're trying to,
Yeah, I understand.
what our goal is.
Understand.
Okay, good. We're all good, everybody?
That clears the desk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Meeting adjourned.